Hey guys, it's Katie. Today I'm recording a video to talk about a subject that I get a lot of questions about because people will frequently see pictures and videos when I'm working with puppies or board and trained dogs where they are dragging leashes around and they're always leashed. So I wanted to kind of explain part of why I do that and what value does it actually have from a training standpoint. So, for those of you who do not know, I am a very firm believer in earning freedom as a reward and not just giving blanket freedom. So, if I was to give blanket freedom, let the dog be completely off leash all the time, in the house, in the yard, etc., etc., um, I have to do way more work in order to ensure uh, the dog's safety ultimately. Leash walking is harder, recall is harder. So I'm going to just list a few reasons specifically why I am a believer in earned freedom. So the concept behind earned freedom, keeping the dog leashed to you, so either tethered to you. Right now, I am doing what's called sit on the dog. So you'll see Willow is right there. Um, so sit on the dog is essentially you keep the dog right next to you, and so your own leg weight or lap weight is essentially keeping the dog close by. So one, it helps the dog learn how to relax when their natural instinct is not to be relaxed, because puppies have lots of sporadic energy. So I use a lot of what's called, again, sit on the dog. I'm not actually sitting on the dog, I'm sitting on the dog's leash. But the idea is that I'm reinforcing a state of mind while the dog is not on place. So I use sit on the dog for in between place and total off leash freedom so that the dog learns how to be relaxed when people are also relaxing or maybe don't want interaction with the dog. And I know that face is really cute. How could you want to ignore it? But believe it or not, there are people that don't necessarily want to pet a dog all the time. So I do that specific thing for, let's say, if I've got company over, I keep the leash on the dog so that I can guarantee boundaries and rules and structure. So if I leave the dog off leash in the house when I've got brand new guests over, at least brand new to that dog, I don't want to throw caution to the wind that someone will say, oh, it's okay, I love dogs, while the dog is jumping all over them. Or someone that is allergic to dogs. So my dad is allergic to dogs. And so I have to keep my dogs with me whenever I am around him. So out of respect for my dad, I keep my dogs leashed when I visit their home or when he visits my home. So my dogs are expected to leave him alone. And that's board and trained dogs too, although I don't really get many board and trained dogs when my family comes down to visit. So some other things that are very common is you might have children or older people that are a little bit more frail and maybe don't have the ability to deal with the nails or the mouthiness. So everyone is familiar with the puppy stage when puppy has basically little razor sharp needles for teeth. And that stage, I see so many arms and legs that are just, they look like pin cushions because the puppy is out of control with its biting and its mouthing. So I use the leash as a way of being able to maintain clarity when the puppy would much rather be doing something that's inappropriate. So the other thing about it is it's really good for potty training or housebreaking. So housebreaking includes potty training and general leave it practice. So the housebreaking is so much easier if your dog isn't free roaming. because then what ends up happening is your dog starts telling you that they need to go potty rather than looking for a corner where no one's watching, or moving to the end of the leash when you come right back in and squatting and pottying in the event that you've just come in from a potty break. So it helps you to pay closer attention to the dog while they're in that stage. Every puppy goes through potential difficulties with potty training. Most people don't know this, but Lyra was not fully potty trained until she was a year old, because of the fact that space surgery set her back on potty training. And so we had to work out the routine, and we had to really keep an eye on things from that standpoint. I didn't do anywhere near the amount of leashing that I do with dogs now that I did with her. So she was a lot more free range, which made potty training harder. Willow, on the flip side, is mostly potty trained. So she is going to be going through a potential minor growth spurt here pretty soon because she just hit 4 months. So potty training can regress during that growth spurt. So I do the leashing so that I can ensure that I'm getting her out in a timely fashion, and so that I can see when the need to go potty arises. Because dogs will typically not try to potty in an area that they're confined to if they can avoid it. So from a sanitation reason, they don't really enjoy sitting in their own urine, which I haven't met any creature alive that enjoys that. So the idea is that we're giving the dog less ability to choose poor decisions. So it helps to build critical thinking ultimately. So the other reasons why I do the tether and always leash training has to do with developing trust and a relationship with the dog. So my life pretty much revolves around making sure that every being in my house's need is met. With the dogs, if they disappear on me, there is a chance I don't know about a need that they have. So it gets the dogs used to hanging out with whomever they're leash trained with. So Willow and Lyra are very used to hanging out with me. If I'm not in the room, they're generally doing something with another family member, but as a general rule of thumb, they come back to me. So the other thing that does is it develops better off-leash skills because the dog is used to being with you. They're used to everywhere you go, I go too. So conversely, that affects the dog's recall. So recall is coming when called. So for instance, I can trust Lyra off leash in most environments. Now, again, if there are leash laws, I keep her leashed because I don't want to be one of those people that does not adhere to laws. Particularly when my dog is just as well behaved on a leash, and we go plenty of places off leash. So I keep the dog leashed for partially the fact that they get used to, just because I'm used to off leash freedom in certain contexts doesn't mean that the leash might not come out for that situation. But anyways, so back to the recall. Again, because the dog is used to choosing you over everything else in the environment, especially if they're tethered to you, they get used to the idea that when I move, I follow, and that creates a much better bond and just a natural recall by itself. So the dog learns to develop a need to follow you. Now, that's not to say that you can't deal with separation at some point. So that's also part of why I do crate training and all that other stuff. But anyways, so the recall is very positively affected by the idea that the puppy is used to existing with you around. The last and probably one of the biggest reasons that I do tether training, sit on the dog, keeping the dog leashed until I trust them. And mind you, some dogs that is 6 months to a year that I'm spending developing the trust in them. So when I am working on leash skills, if the dog learns that constantly creating tension on the leash gets rewarded with going where they want to go, I'm basically teaching the dog that if you pull, I will follow. That's not something I want the dog to think is okay. So if a dog pulls and you feel like your dog has poor leash skills, but you continue to follow them, you are reinforcing those poor leash skills. So I do the tether training and all of that to help develop those leash skills just naturally. So dogs are typically not used to being leashed in a house. All of my dogs are used to being leashed in a house, including board and trained dogs, because I practice leash skills inside where it's not normal to practice, because I have total control of the environment in my house, whereas I don't have total control of the outdoors when they're learning new skill sets. So the last piece to that puzzle is that a lot of people will notice when a dog gets frustrated, they frequently take that out on the leash, meaning that they bite the leash, they think the leash is a tug toy, they chew on the leash, etc., etc. So having the leash following them around, they get so much more used to it that they are less inclined to just chew the leash. So it helps to reduce frustration. It helps to set the dog up to understand that off-leash freedom is subjective to that moment in time. So I do dropped leash quite a bit, which is Willow drags her leash around, board and trained dogs drag their leash around. It's pretty semblant of off-leash training, but I still have the ability to pick that leash up should I need it. So that's kind of why I do a lot of that leash training, is so that it becomes pretty organic to the dog. And it's a set expectation, because in some cases, if you don't practice with your leash, the dog gets very poor with their leash skills. And they get very good at having total freedom to choose whatever they want to do. But anyways, so that's pretty much what I wanted to talk about. If you have questions, feel free to comment, message, email, anything that will help you to be able to work better with your dog. Anyways, I will talk to you soon. Thanks. Bye.